Good morning from Southern California, where it's just a minute or so after 8 o'clock, and we're ready to begin the ESP Dorado webinar. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Tim Pearson. I'm the person responsible for the emails that you've been receiving for the last several weeks. In a minute or so, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Tony Sapienza, who is the architect of ESP Dorado. Tony is also Vice President here at Formula Consultants. And before we conclude today's webinar, Joe Dale, who is President of FCI, will share a few thoughts and sign us off the air. Formula Consultants has been a partner with Unisys for 40 years. And you are all familiar with Formula Consultants' tape management system, Star 1100. That's right, 1100. I said 1100. That tells you a little bit about FCI providing a high-quality tape management system since the 1100 series of Sperry, Rand, /UNIVAC systems, back when computers had vacuum tubes and dinosaurs roamed the earth. Today, in the OS 2200 world, Formula Consultants has two modern-day product offerings. IDS 2200, which is an intrusion detection system. And if you've never looked into that with us before, I suggest you send me an email and we will send you some information about that intrusion detection system. The other FCI product we will showcase today is ESP Dorado, or formerly called Enterprise Storage Pundit. Why pundit? Well, because a pundit is an expert at something. And ESP Dorado turns you into an OS 2200 expert by using a modern, interactive, graphical interface for viewing OS 2200 files, tapes, and source elements. Just some of the main features are an easy-to-navigate dashboard with graphical displays that Tony will demonstrate in a minute or two. You will also see lists of enterprise storage, disk files, tape files, and element metadata. ESP has an easy-to-use, system-wide search capability driving you directly into source content. Bookmarks allow you to return to discovered content that you were researching earlier in the day or earlier in the week or last month. Bookmark it and you'll get back there right away. You can then share your discovered knowledge with your peers in an ESP folder called Tasks. The last major feature to mention is your ability to drill down to OS 2200 source with a simple click of your mouse. I'm now going to bring Tony in, and Tony will share a few PowerPoint slides, then demo the ESP Dorado. But before he takes over, please, if you have questions while Tony is presenting, write your questions down on a piece of paper, and we'll take questions at the end of the PowerPoint presentation and at the end of the live demo. Speaking of dinosaurs, here comes Tony.
Well, I'm not quite a dinosaur, but that's okay. Thanks, Tim. This morning, we're going to basically been showing you a lot of information, and it will come at you fairly quickly. So before we go down that path, I'd like to take just a minute and give you a brief overview of the system architecture that ESP is based upon, and then talk a little bit about security, which from the beginning of the development of our system, we realized that since we'll be operating on a copy of your OS 22 information that will be moved to a server of your choice, that security is of the utmost importance. So we'll go through that a little bit. So my system architecture here starts out with a simple 2200 Dorado platform and its associated disk and tape enterprise storage systems. To that platform, we will introduce a suite of ESP tools that really understand how to address your MFD, your tape library system, R1100 inventory file, and other OS 2200 utilities and metadata source so that we can present a full picture in the ESP client. That information is basically driven by a Windows service that will run on your Windows server, and that service basically communicates with the 2200 through standard FTP process that is available through the Unisys platform as a server. And it places that information, both the metadata as well as the source content, into a Microsoft SQL Server database or SQL Server repository. Once the information is passed to the repository, that information then is available for access from a client. We use a thick-based Windows client supporting anything from Windows 7 through Windows 10, Windows 8, and that client basically has the ability to present all of the metadata information as well as source code content in its own viewer. As I said, security has been of the utmost importance, and as information is passed from the 2200 platform to the Windows Server, we use the full suite of security, of SSL encryption placed into the SQL Server database. We're using Microsoft's complete security for protecting information in their repository, and anybody who accesses the OS 2200 source content, we use the same authentication, user ID, and password as you would to sign into your Unisys OS 2200 demand mode system. Once you have logged in, you're presented with our dashboard, which we're going to kind of drill into right now. The dashboard is actually one of what I will classify as 5 major tabbed-oriented components that support the ESP 2200 client. The dashboard itself is quite oriented, as you would expect. The list screens is more like a Excel. One of our documenters called it a spreadsheet on steroids. You'll see in a few minutes the full complement of customization through grouping, filtering, etc. The ability to facilitate what I will classify as ad hoc queries as you drill down into some of the metadata, and the ability to then access the copy of the source content which we are maintaining in our repository. When you look at an OS 2200 platform, especially from the vast amount of disk and tape information that has been stored since the 70s and 80s, you will find that going from the top down, that is using from the directory, the master file directory, through a program file down into elements of many types, that's not always the easiest way to get at your source content. One of the beginning cornerstones of ESP has been its system-wide search capability. Through simple keyword search criteria, we can pick to retrieve source code, whether it be a actual program, reports, ECL streams, SSG, anything that is in ASCII text can be retrieved in a matter of seconds. As Tim alluded to, once you find this information, it's really quite valuable to retain knowledge of that information and easily return to it, and or to pass it to peers. Many of, as Tim called me a dinosaur, many of our peers have long since either, 1, moved on to other projects, 2, moved on to other companies, or 3, have decided to take the golden parachute and have retired and are living on the beach in Hawaii. Unfortunately, the rest of us have to still maintain these OS 2200 applications, which are the cornerstone of many of the businesses that are running the Dorado platforms. So our ability to pass this information on to other people is quite vital. The other two key panes are detail panes. As you can well imagine, the amount of metadata that we're presenting is quite verbose, as well as the ability to quickly preview content is paramount. That's what's being presented by these other tabs. The dashboard itself is really, as we get into it, it's going to be quite busy, so I want you to think about it in these three areas. One, site summary, which in essence gives you a briefing of what is the current state of the repository in terms of when was the last update maintained, how many files are in the system, etc. Anything in blue, tiles, and tiles is a new topic or a new component that I'm now introducing. A tile, in essence, controls one of our graphical representations. Tiles in blue are denoted for files in disk. Tiles in red denote, in essence, tape information from our STAR 1100 database. Every graphic within the dashboard is supplemented by a lot of additional rich content information. What was showing there was, in essence, a tooltip, in essence, of the current status of the tape pool information of our top tape pools within the system. The file list really presents a list of all of the files that are contained either in the standard or shared directories for the master file, files that are contained on removable disk, files that contain additional tip files, and or files that have been extracted, metadata on files that have been extracted from a multi-file stacked tape. These files can be filtered by using selectors at the top side of the window, and or by using some of the very extensive filtering mechanisms that are available for each column within the file list itself. Some of the information that we keep in terms of a drill down for a file is the backup history. In our particular case, we allow as many backup copies that are still available in a FAS formatted system to be displayed. In this particular case, there was a backup for this file on November 27th, and then there was a subsequent backup, a more recent backup on 12/4. The user now can easily see what files, if he needs to go back to an archival if necessary. For files that are denoted as program files, we further extend that view by providing a list of all elements within that file, and what I will classify, and you'll see this later on, a very quick preview of all the source content that element that is contained within that element. We use minimal main menu system within the ESP client. Everything is really context menu. So whatever you're working with, if you click right-click on it, in essence get a drop-down menu, and as you can see here, drop menu for a element and with a file can provide viewing, bookmarking. You can print an entire list, or you can export that list to Excel if you desire. To the element, we provide a freestanding content viewer for every element you want to look at. So in essence, if you're looking at 10 elements, you would end up with 10 viewers on your desktop, or in my particular case, I use my second or a third screen to, in essence, display these elements or move them to the side because I want to have those elements available for either one, looking at the cross-reference, a multi-tiered cross-reference, or two, looking at the various source content, more or less like putting your fingers inside of a book and using them as a bookmarker. Each viewer itself has its own independent find and mark capability, the content view display area, and at the bottom there is a cross-reference capability for as many words as you want to look at the same time. With ESP 3.1, we are now introducing our full support for the TIP environment community within the Dorado family. We focused on two items. One was the programs and the program files that make up the TIP transaction environment, and two is the actual TIP files themselves, both within the OS2200 container as well as the independent files and some of their, if it's a program file, some of their independent program load structures. In this particular case, I'm only going to talk about the ValTab list in itself, and what you're seeing is pretty standard extract from one of the units' utilities. But what we've done with it is we've provided a much better way to start organizing and presenting that information. In this particular case, I'm using one of the preset buttons that's provided by Formula that in essence takes all of the TIP transaction codes and now groups them in terms of whether they're from a high volume or a high program file or whether it went from one of the original 3 online program files. Further grouping is whether or not they're self-destructive down through whether they're coming from HV-TIP. You'll see this more in use, and you'll understand, I think, what we believe is one of the big benefits. One of the customers that we were dealing with basically has over 8,000 dollars in their system, and it becomes very impossible for them to cross-correlate it without taking it out and putting it into an external system. We did this in conjunction with them and with their help in terms of some of the ways in which it operates. It is one of the key benefits that I believe is marrying the ValTab with the location of the source code that makes up that absolute that is being used for execution of the transaction program. And we've introduced another search mechanism referred to as quick search, and through simply pointing at the ValTab entry and using the drop-down context menu, we now can in essence search the entire find the source code that is affiliated with that executable program. The return from that, in essence, is, as I said, a search screen, and by using the view button, we now, in essence, are looking at the source code. That was basically 2 clicks to go from a ValTab entry to source code that makes up that application program. One of the things that goes beyond that is where are the external libraries that were also mapped into that program. And again, by going to the file that program is located out of, and in essence taking a look at its various build streams, etc., we now can lead you to the external libraries that are used to make up that absolute, which in essence now is loaded into the online TIP program. That's just a brief piece of our TIP program support. I'm not even talking about the file support yet. The ESP Dorado tape list, again, another component of the list support items, provides a view of, for those, I think most of the people on this conference call are using our Star 1100 product. All of the items that are contained within Star that you would see on a detail screen are actually in a property grid. This property grid changes each time you point at a tape row within the tape list. The tape list is really the common denominator for most of our report systems. So what you've got now is a custom report, a report, excuse me, that is a common denominator of all the Star reports that in essence can be customized by using the filters that we talked about, and any piece of information for that particular row now looked at in our view list. One of the major additives that we've had as Formula has gone out and talked to customers, they said, we really understand the value of virtual tape technology, and a lot of things that's coming along in that space, even getting into some of the cloud-based storage items. The problem we have is, what is the content on that tape? And so we have taken and start at least content for the FAS, for tapes that are basically created by FAS, as well as for any tape within the system that is created by the FERPR utility. And we provide not only the content in terms of the stacked file information, but if it's a program file, we also provide the table of content of the elements of that file on the FERPR tape itself, and that's viewable within the ESP tape list component. As with everything else, everything is fully context menu driven, and in this particular case you can bookmark a tape. If you want to come back and look at it later, you can print the listing of information that's coming either from that list of tapes or from that tape itself, or you can export it out to Excel for whatever manipulation you want to perform. Export out to as I said, not everything is easily found from a top-down perspective. Our search assistant is provided to, in essence, find things from either a keyword, which is the easy way to do things, a full rule-based advanced search mechanism using many of the same operators that are available in a Google-like rule search, including order of precedence, inflectional lookups, phrases, etc. Or you can refer to as a filter-only search. You have no keywords, but you want to basically search on a variety of keywords that are specific to your platform and to knowledge within your in-house pundits themselves. So they know, for example, what account code and what file name that they think about, but they're not quite sure which element something is under, and they want to use the quick preview capability, they can. Result lists are returned just like any other list, but it is a list of candidates. And some of we'll use the IA call world, where in essence you either file or you choose a grouping of files, you get a system-wide candidate list immediately. If you come up with multiple searches, you can break those out into multiple windows, put them again on your second or your third display window, leave them up while you're continuing to do your work, and each one standalones by itself. Each one has the preview capability, each one is fully customizable. By strictly hovering over the binoculars, get what we call a quick preview, and you'll see in a minute that quick preview is as fast as you basically can move your mouse. And from the preview you can see not only the source code, you also see the hit list of each item that you had within your search query. As before, everything is fully context menu sensitive, or context menu supported for our typical top 4 action items. ESP operates on a copy of your OS 2200 metadata and source code. We do not operate on anything direct. We basically leave that, we'll call it modification responsibility, up to standard Unisys OS 2200 demand editors and or the local PC editor of choice, whether that PC editor being Eclipse or whether that PC editor Notepad++ or just Notepad. ESP supports the transfer of information from its system directly to those editors of choice without you having to rekey in the qualifier file name, element name, etc., which sometimes could be 25 to 50 characters. And you'll see in a little bit that strictly by going to the content viewer, selecting edit, we can in essence pass that information to a standard terminal emulator running in demand mode, or to the local editor that you might be operating, that you're more comfortable with, either A, for your site, or B, as you individually. Right, that was a very quick whirlwind, and I will leave this open for questions. We don't really, since we're not our experts, I'm going to just ask if somebody has a question, speak up, and then let the next person ask. Obviously, I put everybody to sleep. No. As I said, if this is your first exposure to ESP, it's a lot of information. We'll have some questions maybe after the demo. All right, so this is the ESP client, and its top-level entry really focused at what we'll classify as management personnel and/or focused at people.
Yes.
Go ahead. Oh. At management people and/or people who just want a quick preview of what the status of their OS 2200 enterprise storage is about. As I said earlier, in the center of here is nothing more than a very quick summary letting us know what the current status, when the last update was, how many files we have in the system, etc. Everything, as I noted in blue tiles, is basically focused at files that are located, that are files within the system. Anything in red tiles are basically part of our star 1100 family of information that is available through the standard star processor, but we think is much more visible within this type of presentation. When you look at the desktop, I want you to think of three key words. One is trends, two is ownership, and three is usage or consumption of your enterprise storage. In terms of trends, we're going to basically take a very quick look here. This is our file trend chart. It actually is a two-dimensional graph. On the left-hand side is the amount of tracks that are being consumed by the amount of disk within our current, our own Dorado. In-house, we have a Dorado 4380. We do have a limited amount. We have, I think, about 40,000 tracks within our total system. The system has the ability to see not only files that are currently loaded, but also by taking away one of them, you can see the total allocation. So if we actually had more files allocated than what we have the capability of being loaded, you would see some red spikes sitting above the yellow graph, which would indicate that you have some rollout conditions. In our particular case, we do not have any spikes because we have enough disk space to support that. To take away a little bit of confusion, we're going to take away the number of files, which is basically denoted on the right-hand side. And there's a purpose for this. One is, are we overusing our disk space? Or two, do we have an enormous amount of small disk files that we may want to address? And in this particular case, I caught a situation. If you notice here along the bottom, we really got about 3 months worth of information on our current system. In this particular case, what happened here was we were building up in a bunch of small files, and we did a large purge. Now, who might this be important to? Well, if the spike went the other way, it might be important to somebody coming in the morning and saying, hey, we just had a large spike yesterday. Did somebody's batch program? Did somebody get into our system? What caused this anomaly? And all this is really doing is providing a visual guide as to look into something that was unusual. It also provides an idea of how close you're coming, in essence, to your max amount of system. So trends are very important to us. Another item, and I'm going to take it down a little bit further, and unfortunately it doesn't show as well, we have the same trend capability for our tapes. Now, while it may not look like it, the amount of tapes we use here at Formula is very slight. We probably use nothing more than maybe a half a dozen to a dozen tapes a day amongst our programmer development team, because they don't use a lot, and a lot of it's just basically for backup. But in a site that in essence has some heavy oscillation, this could provide some valuable information. The next thing I talked about is the concept of ownership. When we first started out, we really had a hard time, and we started talking to our customers, and we said, well, is ownership important, and what do you use within your ownership to identify ownership? Well, some people use the Unisys OS 2200 owner capability within the operating system, and we support that. Others said, I really use my ownership because I'm in a chargeback situation. I either want account or I want project. Others just said, we use good old-fashioned qualifiers as a means of handling ownership. In any case, the graph on the left-hand side provides ownership basically via file count, but the graph on the right-hand side provides ownership via track count. So you can see how much of your current tracks within the system are basically being used up by that particular project. So that's a little bit on ownership from the graphic perspective. Another view, however, is how are we using our current system. This particular chart is really showing how are we using the current allocation as program files, how are we using it as print files, how are we using it as Pico files, etc. Not only in terms of count, but again in terms of how much of, so in our particular shop, 18% of all of our allocation is being used by program files, and you can see that very quickly from the graph. As part of the new implementation, as I said, we now have a fully robust TIP file support. And in this particular case, what we're doing is we're looking at all the TIP files in the system, many of them extracted from the metadata, but we also did do some delving down into it, and we can say of the TIP files, there are a certain amount of files that are being used by both Super as well as HV TIP systems. By simply clicking on the graph, and by the way, each graph is tied to a file list. By simply clicking on the graph, you now can see which TIP files are program files, and within the TIP program file, you now have the ability to drill down and see which TIP programs are sitting within that TIP file. Concurrent, if I wanted to, I can also bring up the ValTab list, group the ValTab list by program name, and now I can see that this program name, ADMUX, has 3 transaction codes, and I can see, I'm going to pick a different one. Let's pick OTSVEX. There's the OTSVEX, located in program file 30 under Super. I can take a look at the OTSVEX. As I said, one of the things we've done now is have the ability to search. From the search capability, I can hit the pointer. From the search capability, I now can be, in essence, viewing source code. So I went from a ValTab and/or a TIP file structure through 2 or 3 simple clicks. I'm now looking at the source code that's associated with that transaction program. All this, again, was initiated by simply looking at the graph within the system that is affiliated with the dashboard element, TIP program file, and a drill down through there. So that's pretty well dashboards. And there's a wide variety of additional dashboards. As you can see, I can't even begin to cover. We do support Mapper, by the way, on mainframe. The same thing is true, and I'm not going to drill down into this too much. All of the Star 1100 tape main criteria is supported, whether it's by media type, by retention date, by multi-volume set, by who created certain tapes. So if I wanted to take a look on virtual tape, FERPR tapes, by simply coming in here, clicking, I now have a list of all the virtual tapes that are within my system. And in essence, by clicking down there, I can see the metadata information. By clicking on any one of the tapes and by going to its detail screen, I in essence can see all the star 1100 metadata associated with that tape itself. So that's dashboard, or at least the abbreviation of dashboard. We'll talk a little bit about file list. Again, file list is a list from the MFD from multiple points within the master file directory, whether it be standard or shared directory, whether the item is on removable or, as a matter of fact, here we go. You can be looking at the standard directory only. We have no shared directory in our house. We do have some removable packs. We have our tip map, any containers that in essence have tip maps. There are our tip files in the system, or I can basically take a look also at any tape that is within our system. And see, in essence, the stack files on the tape, and I can go to a program file and see the table content of that program file. That's very uneventful. There we go. So in essence, see elements of the list of elements in that program file on that stack tape, all basically through the client dashboard. Go back and look at the default view again. Anything is fully custom. This entire thing is fully customizable. If I wanted to basically group by qualifier, I can group. If I only wanted to look at qualifiers within my system of MMS, which is one of our previous products that we have available in our online demo, I can take a look at the MMS files. If I want to take a look at an MMS file, in essence, I can see all the files that are under that qualifier. If I have files under that qualifier, again, I can further extend and go down to the table content of that file, or maybe even take a look at the backup history for that particular file. File is not very frequently accessed, so it's not readily accessible. As I said, one of the key things here is the ability to preview the source elements. So on the right hand, this is going to basically do a little jitter jump, and on the right hand side you're going to see a preview screen. There's a preview screen of that element, and I can basically just take a look at each and every element that's contained within that program file pretty much as quickly as I can slide the mouse down across the binoculars. This has been very helpful in terms of our ability to preview a file and look at it without, as they refer to as a top-down perspective. We talked a little bit about the Val tab list. Let's go back to default. On the Val tab list, again, it's an ability to go from Val tabs to transactions and go to source code. We talked a little bit about tape list, and as we said, all the tapes, in essence, have full custom report capability. As a matter of fact, one of the things I've done here is I said, okay, fine, show me all of the FERPR tapes. These are, by the way, some quick view buttons. And in essence, by looking at the program file name, you in essence see the program that created it. Such things as FCI preview buttons for give me a list of all the multi-volume tapes that were created yesterday. In this particular case, we had a FAS backup, and in the FAS backup, Sure, we didn't catch the date on that yet.
Oh, we're not doing updates.
Oh, that's right, we didn't. I apologize to you. We're doing a CP18 upgrade, and we quiescent our updates from yesterday. My fault for not remembering that. So anyway, so you're basically now looking at multi-volume tapes, you're looking at the content of the multi-volume tapes, etc. The last thing I'm going to go to here is, in essence, our what we call our bottom-up view. I'm going to do a very simple search here, and I'm going to search for identification division and the letters MMS. I've left all the other search criteria out. And in this particular case, you get back, my point here is that, by the way, looked at, we have approximately 750,000 source elements in our repository that looked at the full text search capability within SQL Server for both that phrase as well as keyword. Returned to me a list. In essence, now if you look on the right-hand side, what you're going to notice here on the right-hand side is what I classify as a hit list. So if you do a, let's say, a Google-like search, it will return your relevant hits, and it will return, in essence, maybe some extract from that web page that was relevant to your search. Well, that's really what you're looking at here on your right-hand side. You're looking at the relevancy of the word MMS. By strictly pointing at it and clicking, you now, in essence, have the view of the element and the view of the line which that search was founded. By simply going to the viewer, we're now going to go to the OS2200 system and, in essence, display that in my local editor of choice. And my local editor of choice is Notepad++, the elements in, and in essence now I'm working with live OS2200 code. If you notice, there was no keystrokes. There were no involvement of having to transfer the metadata information to get into that file or get into that element. It was strictly point and click, and you're into the edit capability of the system itself. We do use the Unisys product sys to, in essence, help in all of that. And what we're really doing is we're requesting the program Notepad to make a map drive request to the OS2200 platform, and the map drive request is going through the sys interface to deliver such. One of the things that I didn't have a chance, and it appears as though we're running a little bit short here on time, so I'm going to take this a little bit quicker, and I'm going to go to the usage of something that I had previously done, and that was I had found several elements and I had bookmarked them. Now, bookmarking an element is simply as pointing at it, saying bookmark it, and actually just entering some key criteria. But in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking a look at, let's not do all that over and over. So let's pin this. And now I'm going to look at a second bookmark element, and I'm going to look at a third bookmark element. All right, so I've got 3 bookmark elements up, and now if I really wanted to, I could go take a look at the edit, and if you notice here the edit, I'm going to take a look at the edit, and you notice here the edit. And all I'm trying to point out here is the tight integration between ESP and the ability to go into some type of editor capability on the OS2200 platform. It's as quick as you're seeing it, everything is live. One of the items that Tim pointed at, and this will be the last item I'm going to talk about here, actually second to last item, is the fact that now I want to jump to, maybe I found some information and I want to pass that information to a peer. So what I have the ability to do is now go to my task, and in here, one of my cohorts who was doing some documentation, oh, he didn't do anything here. Let's take a different task. So on this particular task, I basically passed some comments, 3 notes, and if I wanted to, in essence, some copy-paste information, this pseudo task was in essence to upgrade some of our transaction programs to use Unisys' own web transaction interface. All I'm saying here is it is an easy way to pass ESP rediscovered knowledge to appear in more of a collaborative session as you're having to work projects. Another particular item would be to take that same list, which in essence I could have found, bookmark the list, and now pass the entire list of all these source elements that made up that project and pass that to an external, we'll call it third-party tool, that might be used in a modernization campaign, upgrading tip transaction programs to another platform or another means. The last item I'm really going to go to here is the easy ability to basically take this list and say, fine, export this list to Excel, and the entire content of that list is automatically exported now for dissemination as I need. And that we think is a very potent capability as you're dealing with people perhaps not in the ID department or people in the ID department that in essence you're passing lists of tapes to give back to your scratch pool, files to eliminate because they're over 3 years old and you can gain back 500,000 tracks of disk space. Whatever it is, ESP supports the export of information, metadata information to a third-party world. So I have already been told that I've overrun my time. I apologize for that. We're going to continue a little bit here. If I can get back to where I want to go. I think what I've hoped that I've shown you is that ESP basically is a very quick way to discover, analyze, and to access all of the files, tapes, and elements on your OS 2200 platform. It supports all of the Dorado enterprise storage space. Through the dashboard and the list, it can be used by all staff through a graphical interface or an easy-to-use search mechanism. You notice I used no OS 2200 ECL utility or any options of utility. And as I hoped I showed you a little bit, it really complements our Star 1100 product. I'm going to now open it up for the second set of questions, if we have any. Come on, guys, give me one question. I'm going to ask the silly question, have we lost phone contact?
This is Dean Narconic. I'm still here. So.
Okay, good. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I was wondering, the last point you mentioned, looking for files that hadn't been accessed in a while, and then candidates for removal. So there is a way to detect, to filter out conditions for I'd like to discover what the files on mass storage are that haven't been touched in 5 years, and then so you can filter that out throughout the file system to detect that type of situation.
Let's go back to default. Let's close down a few things.
And so then to tack on it. Okay.
Here is, I'm looking for a pre-custom button that I had saved previously. I am looking for criteria. I want to see all print files that have not been accessed since January 1st, 2016.
Okay.
The count is 3,000 plus print files, and the amount of disk space I will recover is approximately 500,000 tracks.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does, but let me ask one carry-on question. So let's say now you've identified a candidate that you want to remove, maybe all of these here.
Yep.
And in your mind, you've analyzed that, and you're saying, yes, it's safe to remove these. So what is the tail end of this? I mean, question number one, can I do a fast backup on them before I get rid of them? And then number two, how do I get rid of them from a point-and-click interface type of arrangement?
The answer to that is actually in my first point, and that is that ESP operates on a copy of all of your metadata and content on the OS 2200 platform. One of the most simple things that could happen here would be if I wanted to, and I'm going to be a little bit facetious here, if I wanted to, I could easily take and start filtering this down, and since we're near the tail end, I'll go ahead and do this very quickly. I can just start filtering down everything, so I'm basically going to make sure I don't mess up here. I want qualifier, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. All I'm doing is I'm filtering all the fields out of the system that I don't want to export. I want qualifier, I want file name, and I want cycle. Is basically, I don't want clearance or cycle. I want clearance level, I want this, I want this, I want this. I don't want options. All right, so in essence what I've done here is I've taken this down to qualifier, file name, and cycle. I got files. I then go basically to my export. I export it out to Excel. It's now in an ASCII text. I pass the ASCII text to any one of your in-house utilities, which I'm sure just takes a straightforward qualifier file name feed, and through standard Unisys utilities, you can manipulate it.
Okay.
Again,
the copy that comes down, how frequently does that happen? I mean, a lot of moving things happen on the 2200 file system every little bit. So how does that keep in sync, or how?
Well, okay, so if you're asking, maybe I understand, if you're asking, we perform what we call a periodic update. We really set it at the current time for to run once a day.
Okay.
And once a day, that information is synchronized between the 2200 platform and our SQL Server database. So in essence, the information is at worst case 24 hours old, or you can do what you refer to as a sync on demand. The administrator within the system, which I haven't even talked about, the administrator can basically make a request at any point in time that he wants to do a sync. And most syncs, by the way, run anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Because we do a differential sync. So we're really only dealing with information that has changed, and we use all the date and time information, metadata information, to make sure that we're keeping that.
Okay. So really, yeah, there's not a lot of MIPS usage here. It just sends them down, and all the work's done on the SQL Server end, it sounds like, mostly. So
that's correct.
And then just to verify the concept of finding what you're looking for and pulling it into an editor, and just to make sure I got this right, you're operating no longer on the copy version of that? You're live on the 2200 side making those changes?
That is correct. Anytime you're looking at a results list, and I've actually got several here, so I'm just going to pull one up. So anytime you're looking here, you're in essence looking at a copy of the information, and you're within the content viewer as I described it. The moment you say I want to edit it, then in essence you're passing that information to the editor of choice. This editor of choice, as I said, could be let me show you. This is easy to show you. This editor of choice can be simply switched back and forth. You can either use a demand editor. In this case, I have an IPF user, and I'm going to use my emulator. Or I can change my editor of choice on my local PC to my editor of choice, and this basically just gives our program the knowledge to launch that editor of choice.
Okay, so and let's say that you actually made a change. In our case, I know some of our libraries have read-write keys, so I don't know. I'm assuming there's a way to configure that to deal with those kind of security mechanisms.
Again, let me clarify. We are dealing with a copy of the information. Once you launch into your editor, whether it's a demand editor or a PC-based editor, you are working directly with the source code.
Okay.
You're under complete 100% OS 2200 security.
Okay.
Authorization roles that you've described, whether you're SecOp1 or whether you're ACR or whatever you're operating under.
Yeah. Okay. So, and if you made a change, then you're within the 2200 environment now. So there's not really an auditing kind of event record kept for that task that you did. If you made a change, yeah, that's audited on the 2200 side, but nothing you couldn't, or can you? Can you come into ESP Dorado and say, okay, how many things changed in the course of today's business? How many elements got changed, or how many program sources got changed?
You absolutely could see something similar to that by going back to your file list and by basically using the date and reference times that were in your file list and say, show me all the files that were yesterday. And by last reference date, you would get that listing.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Okay. Yeah, honestly, it was good presentation. A lot to get my head around, though, for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of information, Dean. We realize that, and it goes pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't have the advantage of years and years of 2200 experience, so trying to discover methods from the past, being more accustomed to other tools to use, more Windows-like tools, and making discoveries that way versus TalkEd or whatever. I mean, I can see where this has a good fit for modernization.
Okay. Any other questions, by the way?
Oh, gosh, I'm sure there's a million, but not right now at least, so.
Anybody else have a question?
I'd like to follow up on Dean's statement. Just making a comment. This is Gary Markowski. One of the things of not necessarily having current information on your 2200, or if you're a new user, to me, one of the best things about ESP is that let's say you're having a problem with a program and it's aborting. You can very quickly go in and search, find the program, find the source elements, and then at that point, once you find it, which could be in several files, you could find the correct version or what the latest version is, and it speeds up the process. If you were to try to do this with TalkEd, first you would have to know the files where it is, whereas you can be a contractor, not know a thing about the file system or ownership, and find and locate what it is that you're looking for and where you need to work within an instant. So that's one of the best things about ESP.
Also, we don't use Super, we use the old online file structure. How does that, in the tip realm of things, what does that mean to ESP Dorado?
ESP supports all three of the main structures, and that is the online 432.78.2 FAST2A, as well as Super, as well as HB TIP.
Okay.
This is Joe Dale. Some of you are going to have to leave to other meetings and so forth. I want to take just a moment to thank you all for being here. Thank the guys for showing you what we can in this short period of time about ESP. It's very powerful. We have marketing material that we can and will be happy to send you. This presentation will be recorded and you can look at it later or share it with other folks. We have YouTube videos that are there that show you examples of cases where ESP is extremely valuable. I do want to tell you that we are really anxious to have some of you begin using this. We have done a major demo testing process with Unisys in Minnesota. We've had a major customer bring the system up and thoroughly evaluate it, and we're ready now to go strong. We have support from Unisys, and we expect to do contracting in the same way that we do for SAR 1100 for those of you who are using it, and we look forward to hearing from you, good, bad, or indifferent. Please let us know what you think.
Okay, yeah, this is Dean with Arconic. I have to sign off, but thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thanks to all of you who are still on. We appreciate it. You're going to get another follow-up email from me. This is Tim. I'm the email expert here, I guess. And it'll have that link where you can replay this that we did today because we recorded it. You can watch it again a second time or a third time because it's a lot of information to take hold of. So we appreciate your time today, and we are signing off. Thank you.